Hello, my dear sorry what listeners. I'm in love with our today's story, so let's start. There's a popular saying that goes, things change and people grow. As someone who was devoted to God, feared him, and was a preacher of loyalty, I expected my ex-wife to change and grow, but not in a negative way. What I discovered still gives me chills till today. Hi everyone, I'm Jesse, a 38-year-old male, and my ex-wife, Susan, a 33-year-old female, cheated on me in the most unbelievable way, right under my nose. Susan and I were both in our 20s when we first met. She had just moved to our town and happened to join our church. At that time, I was very active in my local church, and I could easily tell who joined newly. The first time I saw Susan in church that Sunday, I thought she was just one of those people in the neighborhood who decided to join our Sunday service. But after a couple of Sundays, she still came around from attending regular Sunday service. She started showing up in midweek services and even joined to clean the church on Saturdays. As of then, Susan was a very young and beautiful woman, and she was full of life and energy. Her presence had a way of always cheering people up and lifting their spirits, and it was one of the reasons she made friends easily. Also, because of her commitment to our church, people accepted her with open arms, and in less than a year, almost everyone knew who Susan was. All this while, I had been observing her because I wanted to be sure of certain things before I made the move. Truth is, I loved Susan from the first time I saw her, and I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit pulling me to her, but I just liked her. We weren't so close in the beginning. We only saw each other in church during weekly activities or whenever we went out for evangelism. About a year after joining church and winning the hearts of the people she was close to, Susan joined the choir. She had a very beautiful voice, and she had been hiding it because she wasn't sure she could sing. But after weeks of encouragement from her new family, Susan started singing in the choir, and she had been singing for years since then. Around the same time, she also became heavily involved in charity, and she was such a blessing to the church. On the other hand, I was a devoted church member. I wasn't in the choir or a part of the charity movement like Susan. I only did my own thing and contributed to the church in every way I could. After a year plus of observing Susan and seeing how committed she was, I knew it was time to get close to her. We started talking to each other regularly, and with time, we got close. She knew I was hitting on her, but I didn't want to rush into a relationship. I had been badly hurt in the past by my college girlfriend, and I didn't want that to happen again down the line. Susan and I became each other's accountability partners. We attended Bible study together, belonged to the same prayer group, and we did literally everything together. We weren't dating then, but people could tell that there was something going on between us. Eventually, I asked her to officially be my girlfriend, and she said yes. We were both working at that time, so it was easier for us to start saving money toward our wedding. Wait, if you are not subscribed to my channel, please do. Appreciate your support, brother. So, I was working for a small marketing firm in town, while Susan was working as a secretary for one of our church members who owned a medium-sized business. While Susan and I were dating, we never got intimate because it was against our beliefs, and it was also another reason we got married fast. I believed I knew her inside and out and understood her personality because I had been observing her for a very long time. So we went ahead and got married after dating for 7 months. Our wedding was small, but the church supported us, especially since we were both devoted members. Before we got married, we had already secured a bigger apartment we would be moving into. Immediately we returned from our honeymoon, we moved into our apartment and started the new phase of our life together. Those were some of the happiest days of my life. We didn't have kids then, and we didn't have much, but we were so happy together. In fact, by getting married, we pushed each other closer to our dreams, closer to God, and we did so much together. We also agreed that we would not have children until our marriage was 2 years old. That way, we could get to know each other better, spend quality time together, and build a future that would be suitable for our kids. Well, we stuck to the plan. We were also able to start a small business in our neighborhood. It wasn't big, but it was good as a side hustle and as a new couple. Then the church supported us with some basic needs, and Susan used to get a lot of favors from our church members that she was close to. I never regretted marrying Susan. She was sweet, had a big heart, and treated me with so much love. She took care of me, the house, and her job with no complaints. We barely had a reason to argue and fight, and our relationship with God also kept growing. 2 years after we married, we found out Susan was pregnant, and that was a very defining moment for me. I was even happier than I was on our wedding day. During her pregnancy, I supported her as much as I could, especially from her second trimester. The doctor advised her to rest a lot, so she barely did anything. I did the cooking, cleaning, laundry, shopping for groceries, and all. She was not to stress herself in any way, and I ensured that she didn't. Eventually, she gave birth to a boy, Nicholas, and I was the happiest daddy on earth. When Nicholas came, he turned out to be a spitting image of his mother, and people claimed that he had my nose, which I didn't mind. With Nicholas in our lives, we were so happy, and I did everything to give him a beautiful life. Even when Susan had to stop working to look after him, I worked as hard as I could, and I even got an evening job to support my day job. As time passed, Nicholas grew, and Susan and I were so happy. Not to sound like a terrible dad, but the last time I tracked Nicholas' growth was at age 5. From there, he just grew like a weed, and before I knew it, he was in high school. In a twinkle of an eye, he was out of high school and preparing for his career in basketball. We didn't have another child after him because we realized it was not easy to take care of one child, let alone two. Like every other basketball player, Nicholas was tall and strong. He was the tallest in the house. He started playing basketball right from age 9, and he used to play basketball all the time with the other kids in our neighborhood. Even in school, he was in his basketball team, and he was one of his team's best players. When Nicholas finished high school and told us he wanted to go fully into basketball, we weren't surprised because we had seen how much passion he had for it. So we supported him with our support. Nicholas started training more and more, and soon he made friends with some of the basketball players. I knew some of the teenage boys, and I didn't know some because they didn't live or grow up in the neighborhood. Just like his mother, Nicholas was kind, and he looked after other people like we raised him too. Because of his kindness towards others, Nicholas made friends easily. After practicing for the day, Nicholas would invite his friends back to the house for lunch or dinner, and they would come as a group. These were all teenage boys, and although some of them were 19 years old, they had mainly under 18s as our house guests. Whenever Nicholas or I would bring guests home, Susan had to cook for them. It was the same with her. It didn't matter if she was inviting her church friends to our house or her other friends. She had to cook something, and being that Susan was a very good cook and all of her meals were delicious, Nicholas and his friends kept visiting. They knew Susan would always be happy to cook for them, even if they visited 5 times in a week. And this continued for a while. Personally, I didn't have an issue with Susan cooking for the boys whenever they visited, even though the boys came to just play console or hang out with Nicholas. Sometimes, I was happy that he could bring his friends to our house and they were comfortable to dine with us. As of the time Nicholas was pursuing his career in basketball, I was only doing one job. It paid well, and I had enough time to spend with my family while still remaining committed to church. Speaking of church, I slowed down a bit because the responsibility to take care of my family was a lot on me. So, Susan and Nicholas were the only ones who frequented church. As time passed, the bond with Susan and Nicholas's friends grew. Most times, if they were in the neighborhood, they would drop by and say hello to Susan, even when Nicholas was not at home. I witnessed this a lot of times. Most times, maybe when Nicholas and Susan had gone to church for Bible study or whatever activity they had, and I returned from work early, some of Nicholas's older friends would drop by to say hello. I believe there was nothing wrong with that. Aside from cooking for the boys, Susan also treated them like her sons. She encouraged them to pursue their dreams and do their best. Whenever any of them had a sprained ankle or a moved shoulder, she would massage them and fix whatever the problem was in the way she could. Since Nicholas had been playing since he was 9 and in the beginning, he sustained a lot of injuries, Susan knew how to take care of minor issues like that. Sometime around Thanksgiving that year, I noticed that the boys didn't frequent the house like they used to. They came in groups, but it didn't strike me as a serious matter. Although I was used to them arguing while playing games or eating loudly, whenever they were around, I simply believed they were hanging out in another person's home, and Nicholas joined them, which was very normal for teenage boys. I also noticed that Nicholas practiced less, and he didn't look very motivated like he used to be. Most times, I would wake up by 5 a.m. to see Nicholas practicing in the small basketball court in our front yard, but that stopped for a while. When I first asked him why he was no longer playing, he told me he was having some issues with his girlfriend and it was affecting him. I knew his girlfriend and she was a good girl, so I charged him to fix whatever his issue was with her and get his eyes back on the game. This was a couple of days before Nicholas returned home with a bleeding face one evening. That evening, I was resting at home as I had only returned from work, and I wasn't expecting to see Nicholas or his mother because they were meant to be in church. So when he walked into the house with bloodshot eyes, a bleeding nose, and with multiple cuts on his lips, I was scared. We raised Nicholas well, and in his entire life, he has not been in a fight, and I had never seen him like that. When I asked him what happened, he said he got into a fight, and I knew something was wrong. At first, I thought he fought with another guy over his girlfriend, but what I found out caused a lot of thoughts to run through my head. Nicholas didn't want to tell why he fought, but I needed an explanation for the angry blows and bruises on his face. I kept asking him, and eventually, he spoke. He told me that there were rumors of Susan, his mother, sleeping with some of the boys from his basketball team. He had heard the rumors for weeks, and that's why he stopped them from coming to his house, thinking it would go away. But it didn't, and on that day when he couldn't take it anymore, he got angry and tried to defend his mother, and it ended badly. I was very shocked when I heard that, and could not believe that Susan could do such a thing with boys old enough to be her sons, but with all Nicholas had said, everything was pointing in that direction. I had walked in on Susan and one of the boys before, but they acted like the boy was just dropping by and was just about to leave. I never suspected anything, and it was more difficult for me that Nicholas heard about it first, and he was already fighting his friends. So to be sure of the rumors, I bought those small cameras that could easily be hidden in the open, and I placed them in the house. I also didn't tell Susan what I heard from our son. 2 days later, what I feared the most happened. I returned from work and checked the footage, and I saw Susan and 2 of Nicholas's friends doing it. I was so heartbroken, but at the same time, I felt betrayed. I wanted to confront her, but I knew it would only make things worse. So I created multiple anonymous accounts, and I sent censored versions of the videos to the church forum, and I sent the uncensored versions of the videos to the email address of church members I could find in her possession. The outcome was very explosive, and she could not hide the shame. In less than a week, the whole neighborhood heard about it. Since we lived in a very small town in America, it was difficult to contain something like that. When she knew that it was me, she was so broken or pretended to be. She cried and begged for my forgiveness, but I couldn't even look at her because I felt disgusted. She tried to beg Nicholas too, but Nicholas never spoke to her again. She ruined him among his circle of friends. I kicked her out of my house so she could go and be with any of her lovers she chose. We divorced, and the worst was she was alienated by the whole community, and very few of our church members wanted anything to do with her. The last time I heard, she moved out of town, and I haven't seen her since then. Stop. Most of you are not subscribed. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the video. Everything helps for the algorithm.